This CEDA video is brought to you by Shoshone-Bannock Hotel.
Get away to Southeast Idaho's newest casino hotel. For only $75 per night, you'll enjoy award-winning comfort at its best with 156 rooms, beautiful suites, full spa, and new restaurants. Plus, it's located right next to Fort Hall Casino, offering over 900 machines of pure casino excitement 24 hours a day. Call 1-855-746-2268 for your special $75 hotel rate. Again, that's 1-855-SHOW-BAN-8.
Emergency is the only way for stable energy supplies. 5-11, most operators looking for the solution. The ability of the power source powers out the critical reducing cost of preventing collateral damage. The solar power is going to be distributed mainly available as opposed to deal fuel power generators. There is no need to hope for emerging claims to try to guess what's going to hoping fuel so gas and mobile solar unit hoping what they guess is right. A mobile solar unit can act as a reserve for hosts with a couple hours of the city. If there's any disaster power in place, the panels can be easily washed up. Diesel fuels can be with water, but it's a major problem. The same as it applies to earthquake areas where emissions more severe and be prolonged. The solar is the only way to get long-term energy young and other people can build high any disaster viability to be advanced for power not be out for long periods of time. Since refueling is not required in length of operation poses no problem. Solar power systems are a solution because they can be designed to be sustainable in operation without utility power systems, portable communication, medical clinics require non-polluting population. The Army Corps is the only way to solve the plan. Corps results in 9. The Army Corps for response to termination requiring the cutting of fuel safe rapid response to disaster no matter what. The Corps Corps conducts training simulations and exercise the Corps to develop a method for analyzing disaster geological conditions, weather, and other factors. This allows us to target potential disaster areas nationwide. States of the art computer tracking public position for civil supplies and equipment in the areas, but also be able to respond most quickly to response vehicles or street to the station so they can have on-site any disaster within 18 hours. I'm going to drop.
One iteration of the loop would result in a change in the would result in a change in the next iteration. Eventually, he'll do something that ends up breaking down the loop. This results in infinite repeating loops, starting in infinite repeating loops, causes the universe to end. And this is the thought experiment. Sometimes suicide is the only option. Coaching and ordinate. Well, does his mode of reflection pay enough attention to the irredeemable moments of destruction, harm, pain, and suffering inflicted historically by human action in a non-human world? There are, after all, a variety of negative consequences of human action, moments of destruction, moments of suffering, which may not be irredeemable or ever made better. What we try to do is draw some of the consequences reflecting more broadly upon the negative costs of human activity in the context of environmental catastrophe. It is important to make clear that the argument for the global suicide humane is present in the thought experiment itself to show that certain conceptions of modernity does not, which its approach of it represents problematic, taking seriously the idea of global suicide is one way to throw into question the ideology, the dominant discourse of modernist humanist action by giving voice to the idea of human free will. We attempt to draw some of the asymmetries of environmental reality that give cause of the question of why attempts to build bridges from the human to the non-human have so far been unavailing subjects to ethical discourse while dominant presumption that underlies many modern scientific and political attitudes towards technology.
The no action laws are
This argument also makes the Drake argument is a theoretical reason for why alien life is possible, but empirics, which is what this cardiac evaluation should be prior to it, because it confirms your theoretical reasoning are empirically flawed.
Let's talk about the extinction debate. If there's no value to life, then what's the point of living? You say extinction comes first to prioritizing life.
Right.
If we
Well,
don't have
there's
value,
infinite value to life. That's arcade of evidence, and our chemical piece of evidence says
what does it mean to have infinite
you shouldn't
value?
take that choice away from people, right? So, like, my 5-year-old cousin is super happy because Jeff Whippy's playing today, so we can watch Jeff Whippy on TV. I shouldn't kill my 5-year-old cousin because
Does the alternative ever
he
ask
doesn't
you
have
to do that? Like, I guess I'm confused where you're.
Well, I mean, functionally, it means that if I see my 5-year-old cousin getting in danger of having a nuclear meltdown, destroy his house.
Okay, I don't think you understand the criticism.
I shouldn't just let him.
Okay, so if there's no value, what's the point of living?
There's always potential value, and obviously even when there's zero
There's
value to life,
potential.
then like you probably would decay, but like we're contesting that claim.
Right.
Okay. So what about
We
suffering?
would
not
also
visible?
foreclose the
Your
possibility of
Merrifield-
anybody in the future.
Merrifield 99 evidence.
Yep.
Where
So
does it
there are
assume?
some kinds of suffering
Yeah,
that are
where does
not
it assume things like disease, starvation, etc. Isn't inevitable in the status quo? Why, or is inevitable in the status quo? Why does that? Like, where does that?
I mean,
Merrifield
even if
evidence
some of those
assume
things are inevitable, like child abuse is probably inevitable. That doesn't mean that it's a horrific thing that should be acted.
Once again, not part of the criticism.
Well, I mean, it's difficult to draw a distinction saying that child
think it's
abuse we
difficult to
don't
draw that
like
distinction
because
at all.
we've decided it's
Just
morally
don't
reprehensible,
understand.
but standing back while people die of very painful diseases from things like smallpox.
Let's talk-
There's no vaccine, so I would die. How would I be stronger?
What do you mean? I mean, people can be immunized against smallpox.
Okay, so
I mean, these are things that like,
Sure.
these
Let's
are
imagine
things-
hypothetically that the government had created a disease for which there was no vaccine. If I caught that disease and died, how would I be stronger or better off?
I'm not sure what you're asking, like in terms of disease, like what kind of disease is this? Our evidence
I'm
draws
asking you to
delineation
contextualize the K to
Right,
the
I'll
one I see
contextualize it.
myself
Our
for.
evidence is very specific in context of disease. It says that while we may be able to reduce suffering as a result
Right.
of things like the flu or
Okay.
gonorrhea or chlamydia,
Sure.
we've still created AIDS. Like,
Okay.
there is still something greater that would come as a result of trying to prevent that disease, i.e.
So this is a
having
false
vaccinations,
argument?
i.e. having vaccinations that get rid of the flu, but we have to redo those
Right.
vaccinations every year because the flu becomes stronger.
Okay.
These are the arguments that Nietzsche's making about how we create a self-fulfilling prophecy in which we
Okay.
desire our
Okay,
own
sure.
repression. That's
Sure.
what 1872 evidence
So, how does an
provides.
individual who contracts HIV that develops into AIDS become stronger as a result of?
That is happening. The suffering
Right.
as a result of that disease
Right.
is inevitable, which means that
Okay.
you should affirm that suffering.
Well,
You should
you
make
said
the
that
most
it
out of
makes
the values of
individuals
your life that you
stronger.
have while
I'm
your
curious
life is
about
still
what
there.
that process is, that we could say that would be a desirable outcome.
I mean, I think that this is pretty
I think
Like,
this is pretty central.
exemplary,
Okay.
amplified by cancer patients. Like,
Okay.
when you are diagnosed with cancer,
Right?
a poor attitude statistically has shown that death rates are lower when you
Okay.
have a poor attitude
Sure,
when dealing
but
with
regardless
cancer.
of
So embracing
attitude,
that
how does the
suffering,
act of
having a great
contraction-
attitude towards
Yeah,
it
yeah.
probably
Let's talk
affirms your
about
life.
this cancer patient example. So the end goal, even if they take a positive attitude, is to avoid death, correct?
No.
We're linked here, and this refers to Nietzsche in 1872 evidence from the one. He says that when we try to eradicate suffering, it makes extinction more desirable, which means that there's only a probability that extinction becomes inevitable in the world. The affirmative power of the alternatives at least takes the right steps to being able to solve that. The Higgs and Rosenberg says that life is truly valuable. The only way that we can give life any type of value is by the affirmation of the alternative. Also, the Sharon evidence is impact. It says that we shouldn't that extinction is irrelevant because it's about how we relate our lives before extinction happens. Whether it's about how we have value and whether or not we affirm that value. Also, the will worth the affirmation condemns all that is beautiful becomes valuable only as far as we can correct its value. It's prior question. Death, white 90. Artists was we concerned with beauty, science, and truth, and morality with God and CEDA. Morality may be defense against goodness and attempt to avoid knowledge, but the true goodness of the required.
Alright, assets are doing nothing. I'll show you because see, I don't think it's very good. They say the attempt to control chaos about we have impact turn this with the May evidence and rejection of politics and idea of world trying to deny life eternally turn to the whole created. Also, this is from the case you made. You can see that third type of framework beside the extinction leads to things like the Holocaust and genocide in the first place, which means that only accepting death is inevitable. So the reason why these suffering happen. They say suffering is suffering bad. Yes, suffering is inevitable, but there's a difference between the suffering of the one you see and the suffering they fundamentally complete this frustration with things like migraines, things that are out of our control. But what you see is not out of the control because you can see that because of the great cause on the permutation. I think the permutation is the result of permutation. You can do permutation to both, which means that you can choose to embrace the suffering forms or not embrace the suffering forms that the link evidence is talking about. But you can also choose a face acting in the face of extinction is a good thing because the extinction should not be accepted. I think this is pretty established in the crossings. I think the crossings legitimacy proof that they say that we can't act in the face of certain things. For example, she is not allowed to kill because it's a preventable death. The AF is clearly a preventable death, and there's a say opportunity cost of action risk because all those impact burns. I'm going to answer their permutation. They say in the question of ethics, things that Isaac's evidence, you can only evaluate ethics, but by evaluating the consequence of action risk because otherwise leads to absolute moral totemism, which is impacted by the seven evidence that causes things that cause the permutation valid. I'm going to answer the role of valid framework. So they say that we need net benefits. That's stupid. That's not competitive. Also, net benefits entirely after why external choice is bad, and also why life affirmation is a good thing. Permutation severance. It does not sever because you only read a link about we say death is bad, but extinction impacts are good, and even if severance is justified by framework arguments, and independently our net benefits and methodology outweigh because it happens. Yeah, and also there's no root cause to the case because natural disasters aren't caused by humans.
Means that we would better access the internal link to your policy-making arguments rather than you would. Moreover, on the suffering debate, there's going to be a couple of reasons why you're going to reject the one AR concedes the suffering example says that there are some types of suffering that are bad. Nietzsche would agree. Women shouldn't be raped, racism, pretty messed up, and that's not the intent of our. Nietzsche says that the eternal state of Rosano causes to externalize trivial suffers that are inevitable. I think that's made pretty clear in CX the 1 and C. There is a differentiation between inevitable suffering and suffering as part of the human condition, and preventable suffering. Melanie makes it pretty clear that even though we created the grid, solar fires and other potential capacities outside of our control would wreck the grid. This app is literally a disaster response case, supercharged link to criticism. What I see functionally concedes the suffering lies like what I see happens in eats the link to the aesthetic ideal by literally proposing this. Also go to the impact debate. There's a couple of reasons why you're going to prefer life is worthless within the world of the affirmative. This Nietzsche 1872 evidence says that we desire our own repression. Death is irrelevant if we don't have value. The Keenan 7 evidence says that only through affirmation of life can we ignore the horror of this and even when the extinction happens, the world's going to turn the torrent. And 34 evidence says that even if extinction was a real risk, as long as we have some sort of meaning to life, we find extinction of life is not intrinsically valuable unless we have value to life. But even the alternatives do that. She said the consequentialism is good, but consequentialism is a form of slave morality because it allows us to arbitrarily order people, and the consequences of these type of actions leads to the type of slave and herd morality that Nietzsche says is bad.
The alternative cannot solve because we would still do things like respond to disaster. We shouldn't just sit on our hand when a hurricane hits Katrina because then we would allow human beings to suffer needlessly, which is why they get to the point in crossroads where they don't understand how to answer the question about whether or not we should shoot individuals. This is particularly important in the context of the Isaac scar because it means that we can't just allow these things to happen, because if we have the ability to prevent them, then we should take steps to act on life.
Life affirming the maze.
It's also life affirming the maze card, and the maze card and the Epstein-Dow card says that we can take steps together. We can take steps against the government. We can take steps to reaffirm value life. Their intrinsic severance arguments don't exist because they're justified, because our framework justifies us to be able to make permutations, because we don't have to defend the entirety of the one. I see the risk evidence about unconditionality is applied to the affirmative, so I don't understand why it's able to turn at the top of the link debate. They say juryman evidence doesn't matter. It's not a question of response, but whether we respond to diesel versus solar or death versus something. It would explain like case is able to solve, or why we're taking stance against these is able to solve things like the Holocaust, because the line of evidence says that we're able to solve. There's no chance of disaster forming yet. And Zhao and Kurosawa evidence means that we respond to these things in a positive way. The BSL-4 is different than the kinds of disease fixation that they're talking about, because there's no vaccines.